On this episode of Just Informed Talk, Q's latest post want us to review what happened with Hillary Clinton's private email server as new reports from Sarah Carter are coming out and revealing James Baker's testimony and how he, the top FBI lawyer, wanted to press charges on Hillary Clinton. Hi, I'm Craig. Welcome to Just Informed Talk. Thank you guys so much for joining me. If you guys haven't come here, click the big red subscribe button. Helps channel out big time. And now we're going to jump right in. This is the latest Q post. This is where we left off. We have a whole new set of them. They're going to talk about a lot of different stuff. This is Q post 2814. We left off at Q post 2813. As always, if you guys want to get caught up, I always say go back to the landing page, watch these last videos to get you caught up. Plus, if you don't know what QAnon is, watch this video right here. What is QAnon, the Great Awakening? It'll answer all the questions you probably have if you're fairly new to this. So today, we're going to start here with this post from Q, and we're going to go from there. And this is a first pointing us to a tweet from Sarah Carter where it talks about an exclusive news story that just is broken. About 1 year later, the president ordered the ODNI and the ODNI and NSA to do it more than a year ago. This is talking about declassifying documents for Congress. It says, we have yet to see that implemented. Representative Nunez tells me ODNI and NSA impede lawmakers' review of Obama administration's unmasking requests. Now, it leads to this fascinating story, which I want to read through with you guys because there's a lot of incredible information here that I think is certainly worth looking at. So what this story basically says is it runs through exactly what happened with the unmasking process, and it goes through the specific examples of who was unmasking. And for that, I just want to jump down to here where it starts, where it talks about Samantha Powers unmasking. It says, this reporter and others revealed in 2017 that senior Obama officials, including former Secretary of State Susan Rice, former United Nations Ambassador Samantha Powers, and former CIA Director John Brennan, former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper, had made requests to unmask, is what it's saying. Further, there were other senior Obama officials who also made unmasking requests. Powers had made nearly 300 unmasking requests of private communications of Americans, including members of the Trump campaign prior and after the 2016 presidential election. So it goes on to say here that Powers was stressing in her testimony when she said she didn't remember requesting that many, and then it was basically left off here with a Senator Trey Gowdy talking about how Powers stressed in her testimony that she did not sign off on all the requests that were made in her name, raising speculation that someone was falsifying her signature. And that's something that Gowdy was saying. So that was her. Then you have Susan Rice involved in the unmasking, and it seems that she started her unmasking requests for these FISA court application or these FISA warrants was right around 2016, around the time Trump secured the GOP nomination, interestingly enough. And those requests seemed to accelerate after Trump's election in November and launched a transition that continued through January. So the intelligence reports included some intercepts of Americans talking to foreigners and many more involving foreign leaders talking about the future president, his campaign associates, or his transition, right? So this is very interesting. At first, if you guys will remember, Rice denied unmasking Americans, but later she said to MSNBC that she had accessed unmasked intelligence reports involving Trump and his associates, but called claims she had done so for political purposes absolutely false. So, of course, she accessed multiple intelligence reports during the end of Obama's presidency, and she unmasked Americans in some of those reports. The reports revealed the identities of then-candidate Trump and his associates, according to sources. She also said her access of the data did not constitute wiretapping. So, despite President Trump claiming that she did wiretap. And then, of course, you have James Clapper, the Director of National Intelligence. Now, his whole thing is that he was basically, he said he would unmask the identity of a U.S. citizen every couple of weeks. That was just normal for him. It came part and parcel with his job. So I guess those are the three different people who are being accused of illegally unmasking for political purposes. So That's kind of what that's being insinuated by members of Congress, but they want the truth to come out. And what this whole article is talking about is how the ODNI and NSA are not allowing officials in Congress to have access to the documents about who was unmasking and why. But Q has a good point here. Q says discretion must be applied when dealing with matters of national security. Sensitive ongoing investigations. Info released to date was necessary in order to refute fake news narrative and provide the public with a taste of the truth, i.e. future events. Confidential sources house that you gain critical info from is simply one of many vehicles used by design. Controlled at the top. No leaks for this reason, Q. So obviously what we just talked about and everything that was covered in that article about the unmasking, who may have been involved in those issues, that's what Q is referring to, where there's discretion, and that, as much as Q is putting out the information for the reason that the fake news narrative has to have something to contend with it, especially if there are ongoing investigations where there's evidence that could prove for a fact that it's not a conspiracy. It's actual fact that they were unmasking people unlawfully. The Obama administration was using the tools of the FISA court as political for political means. So that is, I think, what is being referred to here. And Q saying that the public needs to know that things are happening, and this is going to be future events, and confidential sources and methods in the House that you gain critical info from. And of course it says here, insert info between critical and from, because Q obviously made a typo here. So it says critical info from is simply one of many vehicles used by design, right? So there's information that's getting out to the public, but at the same time, you have to understand that there's ongoing investigations. So some of the stuff like the unmasking protocols that the House has requested, Devin Nunes may not be able to get out to him and his committee because it would interfere with an ongoing investigation, even in a classified setting. Because look at the way they leak right out of there. Adam Schiff and others seem to have a knack for you put that together. Anyway, the next one talks about the declassification. Now, this is the declassification of everything that we've just talked about. It includes the FISA, it includes who was doing the unmasking, and it talks about this whole thing. You guys have to understand there's a larger picture here where you look at James Baker and Michael Sussman. Who are these two guys? James Baker is the top lawyer at the FBI, and Michael Sussman is the top lawyer for the Democratic National Party. Or National Conference, the DNC. So, or the Democrat top lawyer, whatever. It says and we're going to read this. You got to remember that these two guys were connected to Perkins Coie, CrowdStrike, the DNC. They were connected to Steele. There was millions of dollars exchanged between all of these individuals, and it all ties back to Clinton's. So that's something to keep in mind about what the declassification is going to end up showing us. But it says the declassification of all requested documents plus more will occur. This is not a game. Do not let personal emotional desires, do it now, what is taking so long now, take over. Logical thinking and strategy should always be applied. Game theory. We all want to see equal justice under the law. New threats. Investigations by the Southern District of New York, Adam Schiff, Maxine Waters, in an effort to delay, prevent, release, insurance extension will fail. Transparency is the only way forward. Define the following: treason, sedition, subversion, conspiracy to commit. Do you understand and fully appreciate the gravity of the situation? Do you understand and fully appreciate what POTUS endures each and every single day? He loves this country. He loves you. We must stand together in this fight. This is evil, or there is evil in this world. There is darkness in this world. There are those in power who wish to control and enslave you, to keep you sedated, to keep you unaware, to keep you blind. This will be on our timetable, and we will deliver transparency of prosecution. There is simply no other way except one: Q. So again, everybody out there is, people get impatient and they think nothing's happening, but at the same time, if investigations are going on behind the scenes, we can't know about that. We want equal justice under the law. That means we have to allow that process to take place. And Q is basically telling us, don't I mean, people get impatient, and it takes time for these things to take effect. So you have to remember that. Now, of course, here, these are the things that are coming up. The Southern District of New York is, I think, where you have Michael Cohen and all this testimony about or stuff that happened with the Trump Foundation and how they're going to go after, his taxes if he didn't cross every T and dot every I. That may be something that's coming in the future. Then you have Adam Schiff, who's going to keep launching apparently Russia investigations out of the House Intelligence Committee, even if Robert Mueller concludes his report as has been reported, which we'll talk about later in this video. You have Maxine Waters, who's obviously she's gone all out in every way you can to mobilize the protesters and to mobilize the SJW army to come and go full force against President Trump every single day in the press, in the media, you name it, right? And that all will fail because it's all paper thin. There's nothing there, right? And transparency is the only way forward. Now, in defining treason and sedition and subversion, they all mean the same thing, basically. People who have betrayed our country and have subverted democracy and have betrayed you and I, the American people, and basically everyone in the world by committing such acts and having conspired to commit such acts, apparently. And do we understand the gravity? I mean, I think you guys understand the gravity. Most people would understand it if you could see the scope of all of this. Like I was saying about when you start connecting all these dots, it gets pretty incredible. But it says, do you understand and fully appreciate what POTUS endures each and every single day? Yes. I mean, I understand. I can only imagine, but at the same time, it's almost impossible to fathom what kind of pressure that is. So all I know is that if we keep the president in our prayers and we keep putting our faith in God, then that's what will deliver us. And it says he loves you, yes. And I think we all have an admiration for the president, and we really want him to be successful. And we appreciate that love. And definitely it's reciprocal. And the rest is pretty self-explanatory. You know what they want to do. They want to keep you in the darkness. They want to keep you enslaved. They want to keep you unaware of what's going on and unable to see the bigger picture of all of the evil, all of the corruption, all of there's satanic influences in our society that have taken many minds and twisted and warped them into these weird individuals who've lost their path, I believe. And then you have other individuals who are just kind of willfully ignorant to a degree, and then you have others that really just don't even know what's going on. So it's really a mix of all of that, and there's evil and darkness in this world that we have to stand up against. And there are people who do want to control your mind, and it's happening every day. Look at what happens with the big tech and the way that's controlled. Look at TV and how it's controlled, and we have a lot more to show you today. But yeah, you guys are gonna stick around. Q saying this is our timetable, I think, is exactly what I've always expected. So transparency and prosecution will be the next steps, and there's no other way out except one, and that's in the kill box here with the brackets. So you guys can do with that as you may. It's metaphorical, or at least the brackets and the bold is. And then Q says there might have been another typo here where it should have said country instead of county. So that's something, just a little typo. Now in the next one here, of course, this is one we got back in September 15th of 2018, and it basically was talking about this executive order, which I believe was drafted by the Obama administration but never put into effect. And then President Trump put it into effect, where a part of this executive order outlined the classification prohibitions and limitations, meaning what you can, or reasons why you can and can't, or I guess reasons why you can't classify things. And that in and of itself basically is talking about you can't classify something because it makes you look bad. You can't classify something because you violated the law. You can't classify something because you're trying to restrain competition. You can't classify something to prevent or delay the release of information that does not require the protection and interest of national security. See these four things here? These are the four things that I think have been violated effectively if and by not releasing this information, because to a degree for others that were involved with creating new classifications. For instance, what happened with Rod Rosenstein and expanding the scope? Why was that classified? Was there a valid national security interest for classifying the reason that scope expanded, or was it to prevent embarrassment or to prevent or conceal a violation of law? These are things that you have to really ask yourself going forward. I think that's what this is referring to, and incredibly, we have enough to say that it's looking likely that this may be the outcome, where we actually see this being exactly what was effectively broken in protocol. But the next one here is a statement from the press secretary at the White House, where it talked about, and you guys will remember this from September of 2018, President Trump made a request that a number of committees in Congress and that the president directed the Office of the Director of National Intelligence and the Department of Justice, including the FBI, to provide for the immediate declassification of the following materials. And it talked about all of these different pieces of information related to the FISA court application for surveillance of Carter Page, and the FBI reports of the interviews with Bruce Orr. And we're going to talk about everything that happened and it's coming out with Bruce Orr, because we have a whole story to cover on that later. But it talked about, in addition, President Trump had directed the Department of Justice, including the FBI, to publicly release all text messages relating to the Russia investigation without redaction of James Comey, Andrew McCabe, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, and Bruce Orr, because we all know what's going to be found in there. And of course, here's President Trump's tweet. I think this was soon thereafter, talked about how he met with the DOJ concerning declassification of various unredacted documents. They agreed to release them, but stated that so doing may have a perceived negative impact on the Russia probe. Also, key allies called to ask not to release. Therefore, the Inspector General has been asked to review these documents on an expedited basis. I believe he will move quickly on this and hopefully other things which he is looking at. In the end, I can always declassify if it proves necessary. Speed is very important to me and everyone. So think about this in context. Q's telling us this is review time. Think about this in the context of what Q told us in this previous post just not too long ago. Right here in this post from February 9th, Q gave us a timeline for what's going to happen with the declassification process and how it's going to leave the Office of Inspector General, and it's going to be taken over by William Barr as a part of an executive order from President Trump, which does not require any special oversight. And the DOJ and FBI will be fully capable in reviewing, commenting regarding the operational integrity of sources and methods, etc., which were involved in exactly what we're talking about with this declassification. The connection between Bruce Orr with James Baker and other top officials at the FBI, including James Comey, and the passing of information from Nellie Orr, his wife, and Glenn Simpson, the head of Fusion GPS, and also you're going to have to look at the connections between the DNC's Democrats' top lawyer and James Baker, and that they were both accused of leaking information, and while at the same time they're the same individuals who are working with Perkins Coie to basically recruit Fusion GPS on behalf of the Clintons, where Perkins Coie was actually given $9.1 million from the Clintons in order to get the Perkins Coie law firm to represent them, and then they were tasked with going out to find Fusion GPS, and they basically were the ones who got Christopher Steele to get the Oppo research on the Russia dossier. So there is a lot here. And going into the next post, we covered that, you have another review time, where this is from May of 2018, where basically President Trump was saying that he demanded, and will do so officially, the Department of Justice look into whether or not the FBI infiltrated or surveilled the Trump campaign for political purposes. Now, again, this all ties back to Michael Sussman. This all ties back to James Baker. and CrowdStrike and the DNC and Perkins Coie and Fusion GPS and Christopher Steele. This is all connected, okay? And this is how it's all going to come out. But it says, I hereby demand a second investigation after Schumer of Pelosi for her close ties to Russia and lying about it. Because here, I think she had said something like she had never met with the Russian ambassador, and here's a photo of her with the Russian ambassador, Sergei Kislyak, I believe. So that's what's coming out. So they're going to say, they've said all this stuff about President Trump and how he's a Russian agent, Russia collusion, when everything they say can be contradicted very easily with photos of them in these meetings, right? And that's just for us to review. And the next one here is pretty unfortunate. It's basically Q responding to a woman or a person, I can't tell who, if it's a man or a woman, but it's someone, an anon, who has a really set of unfortunate circumstances. And I said a prayer for her or for them already. Their dog, I guess, getting sick, has to be put down, sad situation, and they've lost all their family and they don't really have anyone to talk to, so they just were reaching out, and Q basically just said thoughts and prayers, may you be comforted by the outpouring of love surrounding you, Q. So yeah, I think that's really an important thing to remember, is that we need to be there for one another. Now the next one here is incredible. This is, you guys all know who this is. This is Ben Garrison. He's got another great piece of work here, and this is basically Gulliver's Travels, but Gulliver's President, where he's being tied down by all these different people. And if you look at the actual picture, it's so incredible. But if you look right here, you see the Q and the siren, but you can see it's got like Maxine Waters and Ilhan Omar, or whatever, and Rod Rosenstein, Obama, Comey, that Tlaib, the Congresswoman, Eric Swalwell, Pelosi, Schumer, the Fed President, Hillary, Ocasio-Cortez, Schiff, the Ninth Circuit, Soros, Acosta, CNN, Strzok, McCabe. Yeah, pretty incredible. And then he's hitting the emergency. I actually just really thought that one was really good. And then Q just basically says, thank you, Patriot, and links to the Twitter post. And then an anon said that Ben Garrison needs to be invited to the White House, and Q just says all he needs to do is ask. So yeah, he should go to the White House. That would be fun. And of course, an anon pulled out the Q, and Q pointed out the Q in that cartoon. The next one here is this. Basically, this was a post from this woman who was watching NCIS New Orleans. If you guys don't know, it's like a TV show, I guess, on CBS. And it says they were talking about Q. And this is actually a real thing. I couldn't even believe it when I saw it. But here, I'll show you guys. So here's the clip from the show. And it's basically these guys who are talking about how Q is fake. One saying that QAnon is fake and the other saying that QAnon is real. And I'm not going to play much of it because they'll copyright strike the video if I put this in, but I'll do my best to get a little bit of it in. So check this out.
QAnon's like a right-wing marketing.
Now it is. All I'm saying is that doesn't necessarily mean that he wasn't real.
Okay, so you guys got that? Said that QAnon's a right-wing marketing ploy, and it doesn't mean that Q wasn't real. That was the whole conversation. And then the woman comes out. Then a woman comes out and says something about Pizzagate and talks about moon landing conspiracies. And then, basically tries to threaten the guy here who said that Q was real. So it's all subliminal. Don't forget that this is all like subliminal stuff, guys. They put it in there. It's liminal in the fact that they're just saying, like, oh, QAnon's fake. It's a right-wing ploy, right? But at the same time, it's the subliminal messaging of planting this idea that Q is fake into people's minds who may have never heard of it. It's almost like it's like a vaccine. It's an inoculation. They're inoculating you against the truth. If you haven't heard about Q and you haven't studied it, you're going to look at these two weirdos talking about it, and you're going to hear one of them who probably is the guy you'd probably listen to or whatever, the character in the show. I don't watch the show, but he'll say something like, oh, that's fake. And then you're like, and then the other guy's is like, oh no, but you never know, right? And then they get called conspiracy theorists, and it's used as a pejorative, obviously, and they get conflated with other conspiracies. And lo and behold, there you have your vaccine, your inoculation against QAnon in the future. You'll never be tempted to go look at it because you'll know through this famous show that you're watching on CBS that QAnon is not real and it's to be associated with fake things, right? That's the way I look at it. It says when their attempts to silence through print fail, they must now include in TV video. And it gives this YouTube video right here, which goes back to that Jordan Kepler show that got canceled on Comedy Central, where they it was called The Opposition, and it's this guy, and they did a whole report on Q and making fun of it and calling it a fake conspiracy theory and all that. And then it says, why put so much attention into a so-called conspiracy? Why is it critically important for them to change your opinion, prevent you from opening your mind? That's a good question. So you guys can do with that what you want. Now, we just got a couple days ago this Dan Coates being forced out soon. This was a Trump friend, I guess, Chris Ruddy, who put this out there, and basically Q confirmed it to a degree by saying that it's interesting that leaked. And now, of course, all of these people are coming out of nowhere. It says, do you think nobody is paying attention to the drops? And you have these people like Maggie Haberman just randomly going, a month ago, POTUS told NYT in Oval Office that he was happy with Coates, right? In response to the senior administration official tells CBS that nothing imminent is planned for the removal of Coates. And then, of course, you have Susan Collins here coming out and saying that Dan Coates is a good friend, former Senate colleague and leader, I can't even do her voice, it's weird, of integrity, who has always served our country well. We are fortunate to have a person of his ability. Yeah, okay, whatever. I believe that he's, to me, there's a lot to be still looked into on Dan, and if he were to leave, it wouldn't be a bad thing. I think we need to bring Admiral Rogers back and make him the DNI, but but that's just me, right? Because I'm just that guy who would want that. And yeah, Q wants us to look at those examples. So it's like, why are they talking about it now? You know what I mean? That's kind of what I think the insinuation there. And then Q points us to this President Trump post where it talks about the press has never been more dishonest than it is today. Stories are written that have absolutely no basis in fact. The writers don't even call asking for verification. They are totally out of control. Sadly, I kept many of them in business. In 6 years, they all go bust. And I can't agree more, because they're all, once there's going to be this whole litany and slew of work, once the truth comes out, that's going to make all of their reporting seem completely one-sided and biased and devoid of fact and factual fact-finding research. That is what's going to happen, and they all might be doing great now, and they all can put us down, especially what they do to my channel, which is incredible. They've really just turned the screws on my channel as far as putting me into the memory hole. But that's what happens, right, when you talk about the truth. And it says, quote, stories are written that have absolutely no basis in fact, and Q says #facts matter. I couldn't agree more. And that's what happens. Now the next one is this. It's some Anon put together this graphic with these two former posts from January talking about Maggie Haberman's Twitter, and where she was making all these weird references to the Trump train, and then how Q was basically making all these references to how she could either stay on the train or get off, I guess. But it's funny because the Anon basically writes, didn't see Dan Coates in the MSN these last couple days, meaning there's no other logical reason for them to post outside of being high to a Q drops. So that is basically what's being insinuated there, that Maggie's watching the Q, and then that was insinuated, and they know what Q is, so they're going to report that, but they can't say it. It's whatever. It's all crazy. Here's a great Ronald Reagan quote. Really great one. It is, when you can't make them see the light, make them feel the heat. Ronald Reagan, right? What a great quote. It's totally true. That's what we're doing right now, I think. And that's from Q. Then the other one here is it was basically somebody put on there, this is what was on the cover of their paper this morning, how Trump reportedly growing tired of Coates and jobs on the line. And Q's just saying, like, what a coincidence that happens to be on the front page of your paper. And Q says, we are the news now. And that totally is where we're at now, to be quite honest. So the next one here is, this is a crazy story. So we'll kind of dovetail into everything that we've been talking about here with the top FBI lawyers and the top Democrat lawyer getting involved with Perkins Coie and this whole dossier funneling. Well, how did that all work? This article kind of breaks it down, and let's just read through it a little bit pretty quickly here. It talks about what happened with this whole situation. It says, first, it was unverified intelligence starting in July 2016 from Trump-hating former British spy Christopher Steele, the author of the infamous Russia dossier. Next, it was sketchy intelligence starting in August 2016 from Fusion GPS founder Glenn Simpson, an opposition research contractor who hired Steele, was paid to help Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign develop political dirt on Trump. Right? It says, now we learn from testimony that is still being kept secret from the public that Orr admitted to Congress last year that he also took Russia information that his wife Nellie assembled against Trump on a computer drive and delivered that to the FBI in 2016. A revelation that has raised fresh concerns in Congress about a possible conflict of interest. Nellie Orr worked for Fusion GPS and for a time worked on the same Clinton-financed Russian research project as Steele, according to the testimony. DOJ ethics rules forbid department officials from working in cases where a spouse has a financial interest, a prohibition that Bruce Orr said he knew about when he forwarded his wife's evidence to the FBI. So, in short, this story is outlining how Bruce Orr was taking information from his wife, who was working for this Clinton-backed opposition research firm, right? She was working for them, basically, getting dirt on Trump, giving it to her husband, who worked at the DOJ. Then he was funneling that to the FBI, which they were then using to go and get FISA warrants in order to spy on the president illegally, in my opinion. But you look at this, and that's basically the long and short of it. So let me just say, you guys can make of this what you may, but when you start connecting all the dots, I'll leave a link to the article if you want to read the whole thing. It just talks about how he goes over what he says and what he did. And you guys got to see that, So the next one here is actually this Sarah Carter article that just came out as well. Now this talks about James Baker, and this is what we were talking about earlier with Michael Sussman. And it talked about how the former FBI lawyer, James Baker, originally believed Hillary Clinton should be charged. Now, this was another part of the story that James Baker has been adamantly saying that he was initially one of the few individuals who really wanted to see Hillary Clinton brought up on charges for her mishandling of highly classified information, right? That was him basically saying that he thought that there was sufficient evidence to secure an indictment to possibly charge her with violations under the Espionage Act, right? And Baker believed this for quite some time. And this article kind of goes over the scrutiny that he had to go under through his testimony in front of Congress, where they talk about basically how, why didn't anything happen when you were the one who was the top lawyer, one of the top lawyers at the FBI, who was arguing with James Comey every day about how Hillary Clinton should be indicted for violation of the Espionage Act for her mishandling of those classified emails. And here's an interesting back and forth that I thought is worth noting, because it shows everything that we just talked about. It says, and this is between the Congressman Ratcliffe and James Baker. So Congressman Ratcliffe says, all right, are you a reasonable prosecutor? And Baker says, not anymore. I'm not a prosecutor anymore. And then there's a quick exchange of questions, and Ratcliffe asks, you were persuaded and stated as a basis that ultimately you were persuaded there was a lack of evidence establishing knowledge or criminal intent, correct? Baker says, yes. Ratcliffe says, when were you persuaded? And Baker says, sorry, pretty late in the process because we were arguing about it, I think up until the end. And Ratcliffe says, so Jim Comey had reached the opposite conclusion as early as or as late as May 2nd of 2017, as reflected in the memo that he created. So, and then Baker says, I know there's been a lot of public discussion about that. This way I experienced that interaction. Other interactions with James Comey, he would throw things out and then people would discuss it. But this is basically what it's saying is that he was fighting with Jim Comey all the way up till the end about how he thought that she should be indicted, and that he was only convinced basically when James Comey went out and had that press conference where he said no reasonable prosecutor would ever bring charges. So he was dissuaded, but he was dismissed. But at the same time, who knows? They could have just been sitting back there going like, how can we protect Hillary? And just, basically game theorying it behind closed doors. So that's exactly what I think we're supposed to take out of that article. Here's a new President Trump tweet, and it's got the red castle in it. You guys can see it up on his Twitter. It's pretty cool. It's a video, and it's got the red castle in it. Of course, where have we seen that before? The red castle, green castle here on the Q boards, right here. And Anon basically posts this picture and great video. And Q says, "What an amazing coincidence, Q." So the next one here is actually interesting. It's from Adam Schiff, of course. He tweets out this right here, saying, Dan, in response to this Shane Harris tweet where it talks about Trump said his intelligence director is not loyal. Dan Coates, this is from Adam Schiff, of course. Dan Coates has been doing an outstanding job as Director of National Intelligence. He speaks truth to power and gives policymakers the best intelligence possible. He's loyal to the country and Constitution, and that is as it should be. So if Adam Schiff is endorsing him, we can go ahead and assume that he's not trustworthy. Just throwing that out there. Here we go. It says, "We really started something, didn't we? Well, now we know he's a bad apple. Fly, Coates, fly. Q." Yeah, that's kind of funny to me. So, yep, it started here on the Q board, huh? And now it's in the news. Go figure. Isn't that funny how that works? Here's a good one talking about the Justice Department preparing for the Mueller report as early as next week. This is breaking. This was on the cover of Drudge. And Q just says, right after Barr is installed, what a coincidence, news moving fast. Q, couldn't agree more. And of course, Q's got an addendum to that saying, Mueller must deliver the report to the DOJ prior to the Office of Inspector General releasing the next installment. You will understand why in the coming weeks. So I guess Mueller's going to have to go straight to the DOJ with this report. So we might not see it for the next installment of the OIG report for a while, which will be outlining some of the more corruption or alleged corruption that's taken place and malfeasance and violations of federal laws that took place behind the scenes. So that's pretty much it. If you guys want to stick around, we got a few more things to talk about. First of all, you guys help the channel out. Come here, click the big red subscribe button, watch these videos, share them on your social media, hit that like button if you guys like what you just saw, and make sure you leave your thoughts, theories, and insights down below. Also, here's a story I had to share. This is actually hilarious. You have this exclusive. A California college called the police over a cartoon frog. What frog, you ask? It's Pepe the Frog. And you know what? It's just terrifying, the campus students there. And I actually saw this and put out this tweet that if these snowflakes were in the real world, they would be in for a rude awakening because they called the police over a piece of printer paper with a frog on it. I mean, I hate to say it, but we're getting a little too sensitive here, okay? It could mean a million different things, not just what you put on it. But speaking of Twitter, you can come over here and find me on Twitter at JustInformYou. It's a great way to connect with the channel and reach out to me, and we can get involved and do some cool stuff. So come over here and find me at JustInformYou on Twitter. That's a cool way you can help out the channel as well. Also check out JustInformedNews.com. When you guys come here, click on the links here if you guys want to get stuff for Q. You have links to all the news. You got news feeds, all types of cool stuff here, plus all the YouTube channel content you can come check out. Also, there's a few ways you can help out the channel financially. I really depend on you guys in the face of YouTube demonetization for help supporting this channel and keeping this work going. So if you guys like what you saw and you want to help keep the content coming, come over here to Patreon. It's patreon.com. It's a monthly donation. There'll be a link in the description, and I appreciate your help. It really, really goes a long way, and your support means the world to me, and it's why I can do this every day for you guys. So also, there's a GoFundMe. It'll be linked down there too if you just want to make a one-time donation instead of the monthly donation over at Patreon. Either way, I really appreciate your help, and I really want to take one more second here at the end to talk about an important part of every episode that we do here, and it talks about God's grace and how it is truly greater And for that, I want to talk about the parable of the lost sheep. And I'm just going to read it to you because it's the way that God and Jesus and the love that is there for you, even though you may not realize it and you may have been lost and you may be estranged from your faith and you may be just lost and you may just have lost touch with it. But remember that God's calling you back. And here's a story of how God calls you back and why. And it's the parable of the lost sheep. Of course, this is out of Matthew chapter 18, verses 10 and forward. It says, "See that you don't look down on one of these little ones, because I tell you that in heaven their angels continually view the face of my Father in heaven." And this is Jesus speaking. "For the Son of Man has come to save the lost. What do you think? If a man has 100 sheep and one of them goes astray, won't he leave the 99 on the hillside and go and search for the stray? And if he finds it, I assure you, he rejoices over that sheep more than over the 99 that did not go astray. In the same way, it is not the will of your Father in heaven that one of these little ones perish." This is the words of our Lord. And these words are so true. God the Father is like our shepherd. And even if he has a flock of 100, he will go to find that one that goes astray. And if we all go into points in our lives where we move astray, and we always look to God to pull us back, and God will always come and find you wherever you are. So remember that. All you have to do is say a prayer and open your heart and start that conversation with God again, and he will bless you. So that's where I'm going to leave it. I want to say thank you guys for watching this episode. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. If you haven't already, make sure you hit the like button. That helps out the channel big time. That's going to be it for me. My name is Craig. This has been Just Informed Talk. Godspeed and God bless each and every one of you, Patriots.